Welcome to Toot Your Own Horn, Music Matters. Today I am with Zac West. Hi, Zac, how are you?
Hi, Lisa. I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here and so excited for you to tell us your story about how you chose the clarinet.
Yeah, well, it's was a long and winding story, as most musical stories are. Not so cut and dry. I do not come from a family of musicians. Nobody that we really know of, in family history was really that musical. And when I was a kid, for some reason, I got it in my mind that I wanted to play the violin of all instruments. That was something I thought I wanted to do. I don't know how I knew that. I don't even think I knew. I don't know how I knew the violin even existed because we didn't listen to classical music at home or like the classic rock family and didn't really have any exposure to that. But when I was a kid, there was a call-in radio program with Santa Claus on one of the local radio stations, and my parents had us call in, and you could talk to Santa and ask Santa what you wanted for Christmas. And so I called in. I must have been in like third grade, second grade, third grade. And I called in and I told Santa that I wanted a violin. And my parents were like, "How does this kid know what a violin is?" And so, anyways, got to fourth grade, and local orchestra came and did some demonstrations, and I picked the violin. So I played violin for a little while, and then I must not have been very good at it because my teacher switched me to the viola. And no dig, viola is a beautiful instrument. I love the viola. But I played that for a little while, and then I got to middle school, and my public school did not have a strings program beyond elementary school. They
Oh,
didn't. They used to have a strings program in middle and high school, but they cut it.
hmm.
So by the time I got to middle school, I could still continue in music, but I had to choose a different instrument. So I picked the clarinet. My mom had played the clarinet back when she was in high school. My sister had played the clarinet, and we had an old Yamaha plastic clarinet collecting dust in the closet. And one day I dug it out and grabbed a reed. God knows how old the reed was. It had been sitting there for a long time. And I started squeaking away on it. And I was like, oh, I really like this. And so I settled on that. And from there on out, it was the clarinet.
Wow. Did you have a private lesson teacher?
Yeah, so I didn't have private lessons until I got to high school. So I was self-taught. My band teacher was a tuba player, a tuba and euphonium player, but he could get around decently on the clarinet. And so he knew that I was really interested. And so he used to pull me out of, if we had, I don't know if you call it advisory, like free periods in class. So he used to pull me out and we would play duets together in the band room. And then it got to the point where I was starting to read through the duets better than he was. And yeah, and so that was a lot of like my quote unquote private education was from a tuba player. And then I got to high school and I auditioned for local youth orchestra. And I told them on the form, they say, how long have you been studying? Who's your private teacher? All of this. And I played for the conductor, and he said, you don't take private lessons. I said, no, I don't take private lessons. I've taught myself. He said, okay, well, here's the deal. You've done really good work. I'll take you in the orchestra, but you have to take private lessons. And that was kind of the deal was you can come play in youth orchestra, but you have to take lessons. And so I said, okay. And then I started clarinet lessons.
Who was your first teacher?
Was just a local woman in the community. She was actually the mother of one of my friends from youth orchestra. The friend of mine was a violinist, and so she was a clarinet player, and she taught. She was a local band teacher, but I studied with her for about a year, and then she said, "You're exceeding what I can help you with. You need to move on to somebody else." So then I started studying with the local player from local professional orchestra. And then he moved out of town. And so then I settled on my permanent teacher, who is a woman by the name of Geeta Brown, who she studied with Pete Hadcock at Eastman and went to study with Deb Hodacki at Michigan, and a very good player, freelances a lot. And I studied with her, yeah, sophomore year through the end of high school. And it was with her that I kind of really caught the bug. And she was my first real serious clarinet teacher and kind of my lifetime teacher. I still talk to her and we still touch base once in a while and has become a mentor and a great friend of mine.
Mhm. And what is the difference between having the bug and not?
That's a great question. I got to see how deeply fulfilling it is and how putting in the hard work is not a punishment or not a chore. It's actually the joy in it and being able to pour so much of yourself into a craft and then see the result. If you have a piece of music that you're working really hard on and spending all this time in the practice room and then you finally get to perform it, or you have an audition and you've been working your butt off for the audition and you do really well. And it was with her that she encouraged me to audition for a lot of things I otherwise wouldn't have. And I started to commute into Boston because I grew up outside of Boston to do ensembles at New England Conservatory after school, and auditioned into better and better orchestras, and I got first chair in this all-state orchestra, and it was all these kinds of things that I got to do that hooked me and said, "Oh my God, this is really amazing." I mean, I remember going and playing. This is when I was a junior in high school when I got first chair in all-state orchestra, and the concert is at Symphony Hall in Boston, which is where the Boston Symphony plays, and it's this glorious hall. And yeah, I remember we were doing Wagner Overture to Der Meistersinger, and I in the first rehearsal, I was like shivers down my spine, hearing all of these really good players around me and all of this incredible music. And we did Dvorak Carnival Overture as well, and a lot of really colorful, exciting things with good clarinet parts. And it's like, oh my God, I'm on stage at Symphony Hall in Boston, and I'm playing Dvorak and I'm playing Wagner, and like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing in the world. Those kinds of opportunities that really, yeah, that gave me the bug. And every time I got to do something like that, it just made me want to do more and more. Life-changing experiences, honestly, as a kid.
When did you make the decision you wanted to become a music major, and how did you choose your school?
This is a good story. So I decided really late in the game, like too late in the game. I had made up my mind that I was going to go study molecular and cellular biology. I had applied to school. I'd gotten a good scholarship, everything. My parents did not go to college, we're not musicians. I wanted something. I was good at science. I liked science. I wanted something that was going to be reliable, that was going to make my parents proud, and all of those kinds of things. And then, yeah, I was all set. The deposit was paid to go to school for that. And then I guess it would have been the winter of my senior year of high school. I won the a concerto competition with my local professional orchestra, and I got to play the Mozart Clarinet Concerto. And I think the concert must have been I think it was in March. And yeah, and I got to play the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, and I came off stage after the performance, and I just went, I have made a terrible, terrible mistake. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. That is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. That was the greatest feeling in the world, was going up there and just kind of bearing your soul and giving it all and getting to play this incredible music. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so then I went to my next clarinet lesson with my teacher and walked in and I said, I think I'm making the wrong career choice. I think I should be a musician. So she calmly looked at me and said, I've known this for a long time. I knew this conversation was coming, but you had to come to this realization on your own. I have a plan. Don't worry, I've been thinking about this for a long time. So I took a year and I went up to Interlocken Arts Academy in Michigan. They have a postgraduate year between high school and college that you can do kind of for people in this situation and people who have been at the academy who need a little bit more time either to prepare for college or to do a course correction, as my teacher called it, a course correction. So I went up there for a year. I convinced my parents, took a lot of convincing, but convinced my parents to send me off basically for a 13th year of school, basically like a fifth year of high school in the woods of northern Michigan. And they thought I was crazy, but saw how much I wanted it, so they figured, okay, all right, we'll do it. You seem to know what you want. So I went up there and I practiced a lot. Practiced really hard for a year. And then I went to school. I did my undergraduate at the Cleveland Institute of Music. I studied there because of the teacher. I went to study with Frank Cohen, who is principal in the Cleveland Orchestra. And my audition at CIM, I didn't know that much about him. And actually, that was one of the few schools I didn't take a lesson at ahead of time, which normally is important for you to do. So I went in and I didn't really know what to expect, but I went into my audition and my audition really became like a mini lesson with him. I think my audition was supposed to be 10 minutes. It went way past 10 minutes. And it basically was turned into him giving me a lesson. I'm sure the people who had audition slots after me were not super happy about that, but I really loved the way that he taught and I loved the rapport that we had. And I came out of that audition and I said, yeah, I think I really want to go here. And then I got in and worked out. I mean, he really went to bat and got me a really good scholarship to go there. And yeah, that's where I went to my undergrad. But that's the truncated version of my crazy story.
I am an Interlocken graduate. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me.
I went to the academy. Who was the teacher at Interlocken when you were there?
It was Alex Fitterstein. Yeah,
Okay.
who's now at Peabody. Yeah, it was cold and I mean, it was cold, cold, cold and so snowy and oh my gosh, yeah, it was I mean, really, it's like the perfect environment to practice though because you got nothing else to do.
It's totally true. It used to snow so much there that we would go from Thor to the Fine Arts Building and they would build a tunnel. We used to call it the Whippy Dip, where you got ice cream in the summertime. That was what
Yep.
we called it, the Whippy Dip. And
Hmm.
they used to build snow tunnels
That's so
from
cool.
Thor all the way to the Fine Arts Building. It was crazy. It was snowed so much there. It was just in the middle of nowhere.
I forget they didn't call it the Whippy Dip when I was there, but I know what you're talking
Melody
about. Yeah.
freeze. It's the melody freeze.
The melody
Right,
freeze,
that's the
yeah.
name of it. We just called it the Whippy
But
Dip.
yeah, you've become a hardy person when it's like, 10 below with the wind chill and you're eating an ice cream in the middle of northern Michigan after just in your case going through a snow tunnel and you're like, this is normal. This is a normal Tuesday night.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you must have had a great experience with Frank Cohen because you wanted to keep going.
Yeah, I did. I mean, that was a wonderful school to be at. It was a pressure cooker. I mean, it was a conservatory, right? And so it was it was the best thing about that school was that I was the worst one in the studio. That was the best thing about that school. Like that, I mean, I learned just as much from my peers, my fellow clarinet players, as I did from my teacher. And just playing next to these upperclassmen and graduate students. And I mean, this whole studio, I think when I started, I think we started with 12 clarinets total and only one teacher. Then when I graduated, we were slightly smaller. I think there were eight of us. And so you're mixed in. I mean, there's orchestra concert every single week for the main orchestra, and then there's also supplemental orchestra things like lab orchestra, which was called conductors orchestra for conducting workshops and conducting recitals. And they need clarinet players all the time, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a freshman and you can barely play. Well, in my case, I was going through so many embouchure changes, and he was changing so much around. I mean, you might be sitting second clarinet to a doctoral student, right? And so I was learning just as much from my studio mates just sitting next to them. I mean, I remember the first rehearsal I had, I was playing, we did Dvorak Seventh Symphony. I guess I must like Dvorak because so many of my pivotal musical moments take place with Dvorak. Dvorak Seventh Symphony. And yeah, and I remember the way that they configured it was they had four clarinets because they had like I don't know what you call it, an assistant. We would just join in for the 2D parts to kind of bulk up the wind section. But the people who were playing first and second clarinet were master's students, and I remember sitting that rehearsal, and I was like, "Wow, these people sound amazing!" And now they have big jobs. And the best thing, was that because he was playing principal in the orchestras, I'd have a lesson with him on Tuesday morning, and then the whole weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or whatever, we just walk down the street and I'd listen to him play. And so sometimes I was working on orchestral excerpts or whatever it was, and then I would I'd work on Dances of Galanta in my lesson, and then I'd go and I'd hear him play Dances of Galanta with the orchestra, and it kind of all made sense. Oh, okay, I get it now. That's why I'm supposed to do XYZ things. And yeah, and then I went on, I did my master's at Indiana University with Ele Eban, who is a wonderful, wonderful man. Yeah, incredible, incredible person. And he had come and he had done some guest teaching for Frank while Frank was on tour with the orchestra. And so I got to know him a little bit and really loved his teaching style. And they're great friends, but they're two completely opposite players. Yeah, and so I felt like I got the best of both worlds. I got so many different ideas about music and how to produce a sound and how to connect with people. And then I was kind of able to take all of that and find my own place somewhere in the middle. And so for me, that was the best thing was that I got two really exceptional teachers that were completely different, but respected one another very much. And so they knew that, I was doing something because the other one had said to do it, and but it was always out of a place of respect. And so I know sometimes you study with people and it's not always the greatest, oh, well, so and so, you shouldn't listen to what they said. And it was
Right.
never that way. And it was always about getting the greatest amount of opinions and playing for as many people as possible. Always encouraged to play for take lessons with other people, just soak in everything I could, especially with Frank. He was very big about us going and watching master classes for other instruments. Learn how they make a legato on the piano, learn how the opera singers support the sound, learn about all those things, and don't do what the clarinet wants you to do. Make the clarinet do what you want to do. That was the big thing. And really, it's so close to the human voice, the clarinet, right? And so we should it's like you should play it like you're singing, I think is the approach. The universal thread from all my teachers was, you know, play it like you're singing it. Play it like it's your voice, and don't try to listen to what the clarinet tells you it wants to do or doesn't want to do. Yeah, true control is just being able to release and just go.
Absolutely. Mr. Marcellus made us take voice lessons for 2 years.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he had the exact same philosophy that it has to be like you're singing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so he would even, I mean, Frank would put on recordings in our lessons of opera singers singing and listen to the way that they're shaping the sound, or go listen to Maria Callas, go listen to Pavarotti, go listen. I remember I was working on Rigoletto Fantasy. And so if you hadn't listened to the whole opera, and if you didn't know the story, you didn't know, you better not bring that piece into your lesson. You have to know exactly where all the arias are from, what character's singing it. Yes, it's a technical showpiece, but if you don't know what's going on, then you can't play that. And yeah, it was the right way to approach it, I think.
The IM and Indiana are very different schools. Indiana's huge. What was that transition like?
Went from being in a kind of a small group of people, to a much larger group of people, but it was nice. It was nice because I got the best of both worlds, right? I got that kind of pressure cooker, super concentrated classical music only. That's all you eat, sleep, and drink classical music 24/7 at CIM. And then I went to Indiana, which is part of a huge university. And not only is there classical music happening, and there's jazz, there are a lot of people who are music education majors. And yeah, and it was great to just be in a broader environment, I think, surrounded by all kinds of people studying different things. I mean, I had a job on campus, and you were often working with people from the law school or public policy or whatever, and you're just talking about what's going on in their world. And I think it was great to have that environment of so many different things going on. And they would have art exhibitions. There was like a movie theater that would play old movies for the film majors, and it was great. But I think the most important thing for me at both schools was the teacher. I mean, Indiana, they're both wonderful music schools and both have very strong orchestral opportunities, chamber music opportunities, recitals, all of that kind of thing. I mean, it's a similar model, just kind of blown up on a bigger scale. I will say that the nice thing about Indiana was that there are three professors there. And so I was in my studio, but in master classes, we always played for the other teachers. You never played for your own teacher in studio class or master class, which I
Nice.
think was great. You never played for them, you always played for the other ones. And you always played in front of other students, so they would give feedback as well. Yeah, and the way that the juries were done there, it was all basically peer feedback. So every student would listen to every jury every semester, and you'd fill out
Wow.
a sheet about comments and everything. And so you'd hear what other students were doing. You'd kind of get a little bit of friendly motivation of, oh my God, they sound really, really good. I need to practice a little bit more. Or, hey, I think my articulation is a little better than I thought it was because other people are struggling with that or something. It was great to be in that environment. The other big advantage for that was I got to study clarinet pedagogy with Howard Klug at Indiana, which was like, I mean, the man knows everything about the clarinet and how it works and can he can listen to somebody for 15 seconds and know exactly what's going on with their tongue position, with their air support, everything. We'll give them two or three little suggestions and then boom, everything's fixed. It's like, how do you do that? I mean, he is an incredible ear and just so good at diagnosing problems and helping people.
So when you got your master's, what were you thinking you were going to do when you left school?
Yeah, well, I was going to take auditions and I wanted to go on the audition circuit and I was preparing for auditions. And then March of 2020 happened. I was preparing for my final recital. I was set to graduate in May of 2020 and we kind of went home for spring break and then never came back. I was going to try to be an associate instructor for my clarinet studio, and I was like, yeah, I just got to go out and audition and win an audition, right? And then that didn't pan out because I didn't even have the chance to go take the auditions because they just weren't there. There was nothing. And so I had a little bit of a, oh my God, what do I do? The rug was just pulled out from under me. I have no idea how to do this. So I went back to Boston and for that first summer of COVID, and I worked full time at a grocery store because I needed something to do. I needed to get out of the house. I needed to make a little bit of money. I was living with my parents, and yeah, and that was, I mean, it was a humbling experience. I mean, I remember pulling into the parking lot for that interview. This must have been like April or June of 2020. I mean, really, only essential businesses like that were hiring. I had thrown in, I had spent the previous month or two sending in applications for anything like arts related that looked like it was still accepting applications. When I was in grad school, I had an internship doing kind of some management and fundraising for a chamber music organization. And so I was applying for all these arts admins jobs and think postings that hadn't been closed yet and everything. They just would get back and say, I'm sorry, we're not hiring. We have no idea when we're going to be able to do this. And so I pulled into the parking lot, my fresh master's degree, and I honestly felt sick to my stomach that I was like, oh my God, I just put in all of that work and now I'm back applying to work at the same place basically I did when I was in high school. And I it was really hard, but I did what I had to do. So I did that for a few months and I just said I can't do this. I got to do some I got to go somewhere. And so my brother called me up. My brother and his girlfriend at the time, now wife, had been living in Vermont for a number of years, and they said, "Look, just you got to get out. Like, just come up here. Just come up here. You'll find something. Everybody's moving to Vermont during COVID. You'll figure it out. It's beautiful up here. You'll find something. It's better than living with mom and dad. Just come up here." I said, "Okay." So I moved up there, and it was right. It was much better. I actually got a job working for Vermont Public Radio. I heard the ad playing on the Vermont their classical music station. Started doing some basic development work, so answering emails from donors, printing out thank you letters, that kind of stuff. And it was actually a really, really great place to work. I loved the people that I worked with, and I still talk to them. And I got pretty good at running the donor database. And so then I was able to pivot that into a job working for WAMU, which is the NPR station in Washington because I knew that I wanted to get back to playing eventually, and I knew that I had to be somewhere where there were more freelancing opportunities, more students. Vermont's gorgeous state, very isolated, and so I knew I wasn't going to be there forever, but it was a great place to be in COVID.
Mhm.
And so I originally grew up in Boston, so I didn't want to go back there. I don't really like New York City. Sorry, my New York friends. Philadelphia, fine. Don't really know anybody there, but I've always liked DC. And so I knew I wanted to be in the Northeast again, and I wanted to be in a big city. And so I said, okay, I think DC will work. So I got the job and came down here, started playing in some groups, got a couple of students at first, and then things built up to the point where I was able to about a year ago, I was able to leave my job at the radio station and become a full-time teacher, ambassador for Lisa's Clarinet Shop, chamber musician. I founded a chamber music organization during a pandemic. That was wild. And yeah, and now I'm at a point where I'm making my life 100% being a musician, which was my goal that I said by the time I'm 30, this was before COVID, I said by the time I'm 30, gonna be making my life completely as a musician, and I did it. So
Awesome. How did it affect you that your initial goals weren't what you were able to do because of COVID?
it was difficult. It was difficult. I kind of had to start thinking outside of the box. And I took a little bit of time away from the clarinet when I was up in Vermont. I would take it out of the case every once in a while and play, but I wasn't playing very much. And in a way that actually not being able to achieve my initial goals, though it was very difficult at the time, was the best thing that could have happened to me because I was on a track to burnout. And I was really hard on myself, as most people in our profession are. We're super self-critical, we're super driven, very goal-oriented, and we will do anything that we need to do to to meet those goals, to win the audition, to get the paycheck. And I was doing all these things. I mean, I was not eating well, I was not taking care of my body, I was not in the right mental space. I was starting to get physically injured from overuse problems that I was just blowing through because I didn't have time to take time off and heal. And I didn't want to tell anybody about them because I didn't want my teachers to tell me to take time off because that would not be good. Oh, and I can't do that. But then I put the clarinet away for a little while and I kind of didn't know what was going to happen. Am I going to still be a musician? I mean, I had quite a few friends that I graduated with that have left music. And I thought that might be me. But after about a year, it started calling back to me, and I could feel that little bit of an itch to take the clarinet out more and more. And then it became like I got to take the clarinet out every day, and I really, and then I would start putting on pieces of music on the stereo and start playing along with them because I wanted to feel like I was playing as part of an ensemble again. And then, yeah, and then it got to the point where I couldn't ignore the itch anymore, and it was back. And I think having that time off to heal has made me a much better musician. Made me a much healthier musician. I'm not perfect. I still have problems. I still get stressed. I still fall into bad habits. I still hurt myself sometimes. But I think that time off actually saved me.
Mhm. Do you still want to play in an orchestra?
I love playing in orchestra, but I don't know if that's what I want to do full time. I kind of like what I do now. I like being able to make my own way and being able to, for lack of a better phrase, like pick and choose what I get to do. So I get to program a lot of music that I want to play. I get to put on concerts with friends, music that I want to play, music that I think is meaningful, and I'm kind of not beholden to what repertoire is being played or what I get called to do. I'm lucky I still get called to do freelance things, which I love doing. Who knows? Maybe someday I'll say, yeah, I'm gonna go take an audition and maybe I'll win the job and that will be awesome. But I guess I don't know if I want to play in an orchestra full time. I would be very happy if I won a job that was not a full-time orchestra, that was kind of a guaranteed service situation, and I played X amount of concerts a year. That would be awesome, but I don't feel like I need to go to rehearsal a couple times a week and play every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night in a big fancy concert hall in Tails. I don't know if I need to do that. If they want to call me once in a while to come sub, absolutely. But I don't know if I need to do that. And for a while, I thought that that meant that I had to do that to be successful. That was what success looked like, and that would get me the validation and would get me the appreciation from my peers, and like I'd get to make that big Facebook post like I'm principal clarinet and so, and everybody would see that I'm important and meaningful. But I actually can be a very good musician and a very satisfied person, and I can make a positive impact in my community doing what I'm doing now. More positive impact.
And how would you explain that impact?
Well, music changes people's lives, and people need to encounter music in ways that works for them, right? So whether that's if you're a student or an adult amateur that wants to study an instrument and you want to take lessons from somebody like me, and we get to have conversations about music and expressivity and all those wonderful things that you get to do doing a creative craft. Or whether that's playing a chamber music concert in an unconventional venue. I mean, we've done outreach concerts at homeless shelters in Washington, D.C., where you just see, these people who come in and going through horrible things in their lives, things you can't even imagine, who just look so defeated and their eyes are down and and then you're playing music and you're engaging with them, or, we did this wonderful thing where we had a friend of mine who was playing fiddle music, and we handed out all these percussion instruments, and we had the residents at the homeless shelter were playing along, and it was like their eyes light up, and they're feeling happy, and they're feeling joy, and they're feeling connection, and it's a little bit of respite from the terrible things that are going on in their lives. And I mean, that for me is more impactful than going and and sitting in my coattails and playing for a well-heeled audience that might be asleep for most of the concert. I kind of hate to say that, but it's true, right? And we have such a problem in classical music where we expect people to come to us because they always have. Well, they come to the concert hall to hear us, right? We have to actually go to them, and we have to meet them where they are at, because the future audiences are not coming to the concert hall. The future audiences they want and need to encounter classical music in the spaces that they're already in, right? So whether that's doing a chamber music concert at a brewery, or whether it's making a concerted effort to go in and support school music programs during the day, right? I do a lot of work as a clinician during the day, and making sure that I'm giving students good quality sectionals and talking to them about equipment. And hey, you're really struggling with your instrument, but actually it might just be that you don't have the right stuff going on in your instrument, right? And then we make a small change, and it's like, oh my God, I can actually play. This is easy. This is fun. I actually do really like this, and I'm good at this. We need to do a better job as a musical community about meeting people where they're at, instead of thinking that they're just going to come seek us out, because unfortunately that degree of music education isn't happening anymore. That exposure, in public schools, not everybody has a general music class. Not everybody, even something as simple as like not everybody plays the recorder in the fourth grade or whatever, like we used to, right? So a lot of people just don't know about this art form, or feel like it's not for them. They have an image of, I don't look a certain way, or I don't dress a certain way, or I don't make enough money, or whatever, or I'm not smart enough. I probably won't like Bach, or I won't like Mozart, or whatever. But just to show them that there's so much more that's out there, and that this art form is for them, and art is for everybody. So I think we all need to be advocates for our art form if we want it to survive.
And to the musicians who are out there getting undergraduate and advanced degrees, what would you say to them about what you've learned about the industry and what value it holds to them in terms of their career development?
Get creative and carve your own path, because those traditional full-time opportunities for musicians, think a full-time orchestra job, think a tenured professorship somewhere. There are very few of them, and they're getting less. And so even if you are an incredible player, you might not land one of those positions. And it's going to feel awful. It's going to feel like you failed, or that you were not good enough, or you just put all of that work in and you don't have what it takes to make the cut. I mean, I felt that way, and I still feel that way sometimes. Like, wow, I didn't win that job, or oh my gosh, I can't believe I got cut in the first round of that audition, and I just spent all those years in school. What the heck? Get creative, carve your own path, find the things that really matter to you, that really resonate with you. For me, it's being an educator, being a chamber musician, being that on-call person, and being an ambassador for Lisa's clarinet shop. And for me, that is my path that I've kind of found. And it's taken a lot of growth and realization that that doesn't mean that I'm not a great musician. It doesn't mean that I'm not a great clarinet player just because I don't have this position that I thought I needed when I was in school. It just means that I'm a more creative, more versatile person. And you're probably not going to make a living doing just one thing in music, right? It's going to be the portfolio career that we keep talking about. You're going to make a living from doing a bunch of different things and pulling it all together. And that's actually a very freeing thing, because you get to decide what those things are and what matters to you. And you really get to put your time and your effort where it matters.
What kind of rewards do you feel that you get from these positions collectively?
I just want people to care about the music. The joy that you get to see from a student who is finally able to play their C major scale for the first time, or can articulate the altissimo register of the clarinet, or maybe people who have never felt welcomed into classical music before, who get to listen to an outreach concert and get to shake maracas along with Irish fiddle music. I have been playing in chamber music concerts where I have seen people crying as a result of the art that we're creating. And that is like the most amazing thing to look out in the audience after you just finish a slow movement of, I don't know, Schubert octet or something, and to see people dabbing their eyes and crying because it meant that much to them. And people who maybe wouldn't have come to a chamber music performance otherwise, or yeah, who maybe would have never otherwise experienced that art form, but because of the way that you're presenting concerts or the communities that you're trying to network with, or the work on the ground you're doing, trying to welcome underrepresented audiences into the space, you get to make an impact. You get to see it for the first time when people realize why this art form has been around for so long and why it matters. And you get to see that aha moment of, oh my God, this is why people like classical music. This is why people love classical music, because it really is an incredible art form. And we need to show more people that.
If somebody was listening to this podcast and was so excited by your story, what would you say to them to get them to try to play a wind instrument right now?
Oh, do it. It's the best thing in the world. I would say step number one is to get a good instrument, be set from the beginning with an instrument and a teacher that's going to help you succeed. It doesn't matter what you want to do with it. If you want to go and you want to play at a very high level, or you want to go and you just want to play around and have fun with it, spend the time talking to someone to get good equipment so that you're not frustrated at the beginning. Because if you go and you buy a clarinet online from a certain famous big box retailer and it comes in the mail and you can't get a sound out of it, it's probably not you. It's probably the instrument. Go to people who know, who are spend their whole lives educating people, right? Who know what works and can help you figure out what is going to work for you. Make that investment, because it is an investment in the tools of your craft, and find a good teacher to help you. Yeah, those would be the two most important things. And find opportunities to play. I mean, there are amateur music organizations everywhere, all like hidden below the surface, right? In your town, your city, your community, there's probably a community band, and you can join. And it doesn't matter if you haven't figured out a lot of the clarinet yet. They'll stick you somewhere in the section and you'll have a hoot. You'll have a great time and you'll love it. And that's the most important thing. That community, that camaraderie. I mean, you just can't get that from anything else.